into what I discuss often as
Recording
a
in
super
progress.
regional type environment. Very athletic team, have been amazing. Whatever, 22-3 at home. I've had several trips there. It's a challenging place to play, artificial turf. The conditions. I think Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, Louisville, the wind seems to impact things at these parks quite a bit. So we'll have to adapt to that. They're very, very athletic, very aggressive on the bases, very aggressive, and built for that. So you have to try to manage that, and the best way to manage that is try to keep people off base and limit just the pure opportunities for them to threaten. They don't strike out. You look at their numbers and they're very difficult to strike out, but their walk numbers are still okay. It's not just a free swinging, reckless group. So they're really good. And our work is cut out. Great balance, left-handed pitching, right-handed pitching. I think the same thing with the lineup. And you'll see this with most really good teams. There is some balance there. They've got some really nice left-handed bats, switch hitters, some right-handed experienced bats. So tough. Clearly we're walking into a very difficult situation there, and Dan's been doing a good job with that program for quite some time. Jamie will go for us Friday. Bellini, Mendez. The break, in theory, you would think maybe that gives guys a little reset and a little rest. Clearly, the way the game started for us on Tuesday after just an amazing pregame, just a phenomenal feeling on that field. Game-wise, we were a little bit out of rhythm, I think, just from not playing. But from the pitching side, you hope the rest maybe refresh some of the guys. You're at that point in the season where they've logged some innings, and so maybe Jamie and Joey and Wes are a little bit more fresh. Bullpen got some rest. I know we used some guys on Tuesday, tough ball game, but used some guys and didn't use everybody. So, I hope that pause, which was clearly 100% warranted, maybe it does give some of the pitchers a chance to reset a little bit.
You talked about it, hoping, I guess, that can maybe give the pitcher a reset, but I feel like it also could, negatively affect how they've built up, kind of going a whole week without throwing. I guess, how did you send everyone kind of with their families or away for the weekend? I guess, did you kind of tell them anything they should do to maybe try and offset some of that, or how did you manage that?
Well, they had opportunities to throw bullpens, and some of the guys chose to stay and do some stuff on their own. And Micah was savvy enough to lengthen it out a little bit, so it wasn't, your bullpens normally could be 20 to 28, 30 pitches in some cases, and in this case, those guys threw a little bit more. So it was almost two bullpens. You kind of build it so you're not completely going from 100 pitches to 25 to then try to go back to 85 to 100. So I think we're in a good spot there. I really do. And Micah has tremendous feel for how to manage those guys. And the starting pitcher, there's two groups in the pitching staff. You have your starting pitchers that you can create a little bit more of a routine. And I know we've had a lot of Thursday series, Friday series. So there are variables, but you can build a map for them to try to get to their next start. And then the relievers, that's a little different. So their side work, and we actually had some guys throw live yesterday to hitters just to see somebody in the box, and some of the hitters needed to see live pitching. So those were more of the relievers that didn't get to throw Tuesday. So you just have to build and try to create based on their role, and Micah does a good job. So I think we're okay. Like, is that a concern? Sure, but I don't think it's a huge roadblock this weekend for us.
Coach, just putting baseball away for a second, what happened on Thursday is obviously difficult for anybody to deal with. Just how are the guys feeling emotionally, just as students, people, and you as a coaching staff, how are you guys trying to, help them deal with, some of the emotion that they might be feeling?
Well, like I've talked about in detail, making sure they were safe immediately. Like you have layers of thoughts on what is the most important. And clearly at that time, like making sure you knew where everybody was and then they were safe. Number one. And once we were able to check that, then it's making sure their parents knew that they were safe. You can think through what that feels like as a parent. And I think, like I discussed, every person that had a loved one or a friend or a colleague at Florida State, in that moment on Thursday, you fear the worst for the people you know. And so once you make sure like your group that you're responsible for is safe, you want them to relay messaging to their families and their loved ones that, hey, I'm okay, and I'm in a safe place, and we will figure out the baseball and the school part. Right now, let's just get away from this scene. Let's let the law enforcement do their job. And I cannot say enough about the response of law enforcement first responders, paramedic first responders, trauma unit first responders. And that's part of what we tried to recognize Tuesday during the game. Okay. Then the decision on what to do, knowing what the campus scene felt like over the weekend. Jordan, we just felt like at the time, and the athletic administration and President McCullough were in agreement, like this series did not need to be played out of respect for everybody, the injured, the deceased, the law enforcement that went through unimaginable moments. We needed to pause it. Then we regrouped and to discuss the support that you have at Florida State. And this takes you into spaces as a leader that you just want the people that you're trying to mentor and lead to know that there's help, there's outreach, there's support of every capacity at Florida State. And I talk about the family atmosphere. It's really what it is. And you have psychological support, you have spiritual support, you have nutritional support, you have strength and conditioning, athletic training, coaching, staffing. We provided everything we can. If there's something on your mind, please talk to us. The faculty is in the same position. Their decision on how to handle the grades from this point forward, making those decisions once things have calmed down, those are still difficult decisions. And some of these kids, I think about some of the seniors, you're a couple weeks away in some cases from graduation, and now are you going to go back to campus? Are you going to go back to class? Like, tough. So you just want to talk through with the players and staff of what's available for you. How do we come together? How do we move forward? You can't rationalize with irrational moments at times, and you just have to try to move things forward and heal and help. And again, what we tried to do Tuesday, I felt the need for an opportunity for everybody to be together on that field. That's what we created. That's a lot of information to try to dissect what is correct and what we did right. You have to go on what your heart and gut and mind are telling you in those moments. And then some of the decisions are instantaneous and critical. Some you have time to settle and think through a little bit. But when that's happening, the respect and the courage of the people that don't have time to think through some of the moment life-changing decisions, I just have the utmost respect for how they led that.
Coach, I know the plan last week with the Thursday series was to let John go on Thursday and then kind of go from there. Are you hoping to get something out of John here in the next few weeks, develop a kind of a more, I don't know, a longer term role in terms of what he can give you guys as possibly a starter, or what are you guys trying to get out of John here?
Abraham, yeah, I think he can do everything. I do. And some of these things line up, and the game talks to you, if that's fair for me to say. And I hope I listen. But going into Thursday, like, it was telling us that made sense. And then clearly we used him. I can't remember, 2 innings or something on Tuesday. To say that we have a midweek starter, Aslan, going into these things, I don't know. We have, I mean, as difficult a weekend as you could have facing us. So, you kind of want all hands on deck for that, to try to give the team the best opportunity to find a way to win there. So we had numbers in mind Tuesday in the game for what the relievers should do if we wanted them back Friday. So Mike and I discussed, all right, what's the number range for the guys to be available Friday? What's the number range if we feel like we're in a situation where somebody's really cooking and we're willing to sacrifice their availability Friday and then look to Saturday? So we had 2 brackets of numbers, including John. We need to build and look, and the hours we spend just discussing recruiting, and my morning revolved around recruiting stuff right now. And you're looking at almost your own team and recruiting. Okay, what on your team looks like it could be the next wave of starters, relievers? Where are you? Draft. And John's right there. Could he be a starter? Yes. Does he need to get a little bit more physical and a little more consistent with some things? Sure. But right now he's a Swiss Army knife for us. I feel like he could start games. I feel like he brings a little adrenaline in those leverage moments. So how we use him is just, again, how the game talks to us at the time. Who's available, who's healthy, where are we, and what makes the most sense.
Link, you talked before Chase got back, kind of in those weeks leading up, about just like your confidence of how he could transform the lineup in a way. I think that's proven to be true. I think he's averaging two hits a game since he's been back. Has created chaos in quite a few different ways. What gave you such confidence that would be true? And I guess, what is the passion he plays with brought to the team, just from a chemistry and all that standpoint?
That energy is contagious, and he values every pitch. And I think the vast majority of our players and the players at this level, like, they're fighting for every pitch. Some just have a more outward way of expressing it. And I don't know that players' body language, good, bad, I don't think sometimes they realize it, but the exuberance he plays with, it does provide energy. Now, how to categorize that and put a value on it, you just feel it. Like, it's like the excitement in the stadium when the stadium's full and there's energy. It's different. And you sense that with him, and he wants to do everything full speed. The guy wants to win. He wants to run. He wants to catch every ball. I don't know that I've ever coached a player where you're trying to teach them when and how to almost notch down a little bit to make sliding more safe and appropriate and conducive, and to recognize the dimensions and the wall and where the wall is and where the other players are, and like when you should dive head first and when you shouldn't. Like, those are unique things, but that player is so dynamic with the explosiveness that it does warrant a very unique coaching, intangible discussion of the details of that. The energy, I mean, it's just off the charts. And, he does things in those games that it just, the uncomfort I think you feel. I played against players like that. Probably you get into the more advanced phases of the minor leagues, and there's guys that are on the cusp of being major league top of the order bats, and you feel like you're positioning like you might have to adjust a little bit just because of the raw speed. And I think he's in that category. And there's only, in my time, one other player that I played against as a shortstop in AA baseball that I felt like I literally have to shallow myself to handle it. And I think the unsettled feeling changes the game. And when you have that on the bases, then I think the pitchers tend to make a little bit more mistakes on the mound because you're conscious of the run. And if you feel like if you bury your secondary pitches, this guy is going to advance on any dirt ball. You're trying to be quicker to the plate. Sometimes the mechanics that change when you're trying to be quick to the plate leave the ball up in the zone. So there's a lot of different blends of how that type of player helps. And Gage is in that same boat. So having those two when they're on that game changes things, not just for them, but for the offensive part of it, and then clearly the feeling on the field.
Coach, I want to follow up. You mentioned Gage there. He's just been so consistent this season, especially at the leadoff spot. I think it's only out of the 37, 6 games he hasn't recorded a hit. Just his ability to get on base and what he does in the field. We saw it on Tuesday. Just that spark that he can bring, especially leading off in the lineup.
Well, when you watch the historical video, I watched a ton of at-bats from his freshman year, sophomore year, and you're trying to make sure when you add the transfers that you're adding the correct talent and character that fits a specific need that you have in the program. And boy, does it. I mean, he's from South Georgia. He was a freshman All-American at Texas Tech. And so we knew of him, and you can watch that. The technology allows you to watch and dig into things, and we saw it. So then I think he likes the game and working on things so much. Once we solidified, all right, this is how we need to do it at the plate, physically, mentally, and let's go. And, you know, the bunting game has helped him periodically. He's had some big base hit bunts. He's becoming a complete player. He could play anywhere in the outfield. The plays in right field. Right field's tough. And traditionally, there's more right-handed hitters, like holistically, and a lot of the balls that are kind of tossed out that way from your right-handed hitters, there just seems to be more activity in that right field area than left, and sometimes even center field, quite frankly. So what he's done out there in every direction, and, you know, our field dimensions are tight, so you don't get to see us. There's only so far back you can run a Hauser before you're in the road or the circus. But when you get to these bigger fields, the Notre Dames, you're going to be at Louisville. Vatek is big. So then you start to see him going deeper and further, and it's fun. And the diving play and the throw he made the other day, phenomenal. Kind of ignited us because we just weren't on it early in that game. And then the home run. So he's put himself in a really good category of a player, and high character, high talent. That's a good combination. Hard worker. So when you blend all that, you see guys that start to take that next step.
Coach,
Link, I think
go ahead, Jarrett.
Link, I think you didn't have, I know, the specifics the other night right after, and I think it wasn't the most important thing. Is it the rule? Did they change it? Is it one additional game for Max now? He has to be out because he got ejected and change it from 2 to 1?
One game, and then the pitchers, whether you're a starting pitcher or reliever. Kurt, there's so many rules, like in Australia, but he's out a game. He's out, you know, clearly the game, and then one more game. So he can't be involved tomorrow. Now the pitching side, the starter, reliever, there's different rules based on that. And, you know, we need to do better. Our guys are passionate, and there's a history with that one. I'm not going to spend any more time on what was going on there. Clearly on our end, it was over the top and unfortunate. But our guys, like, there is that urgency and sense of wanting to produce so intensely that I have seen it last year, this year. Like, there is that exuberance, and in some cases, clearly way out of bounds. We need to do better, but as a whole, that passion that they have for trying to play the game and trying to win and trying to deliver the result that is there.
Coach Jackson was obviously back in the lineup on Tuesday. Just how is he feeling? And then how do you plan on managing him, throughout the season so that you can get him, fresh for the postseason?
Well, he's feeling fine. Now, Jackson wants to play. The guy wants to play. So you're trying to read players sometimes because you're telling me you're feeling fine. Are you like, are we fine? So we're trying to ease back in there. And clearly he had been out in the at-bats and didn't quite look on it. But you're talking about a guy that helped carry us through the most critical part of the season last year. And there's a lot of credit in the account. So as we feel like he's more prepared to physically go start catching these games again, and the DH spot, I like it. It's a tough out. So he's getting there, man. It's been a challenge. Like, he's battled 2 or 3 different things, and there has not been a lot of rhythm to his season. But maybe the same thing could have been said last year too. And then all of a sudden, as we got to crunch time down the stretch, he really delivered. So it's coming, and he's getting better. It's just there is a rhythm to the sport, and clearly he's been as out of rhythm and just the health of himself as really you could be without being out for the year. Bladen Plain's in a whole different category, but those nagging things that come up and then go away and then there's something else. I think that's been the biggest challenge, clearly, just for him.
Coach, we've asked you about Max a few times over the last 2 seasons, just with that energy he plays with, and you see such a value to it. You want him to learn a lesson, but you don't want him to lose what makes him kind of great. I mean, do you think the message has been received? Have you talked to him? You don't have to give us details on it, but just how are you going to go about kind of managing Max to maximize his potential?
As on, I'm trying. We're trying as coaches. Every player that you coach has different tendencies and different personalities, and Max is a fighter, and every pitch, every play, it's part of what makes him one of the most dynamic bats in the game. But containing some of the things that happen, clearly we have to do better. And we've talked to him, and this is as firm a message as can be sent. The guy helps our team and program. He does on the field, in every sense. He just has to, from a collegiate standpoint and a professional standpoint, there's a lot more baseball ahead of him, and a lot of it's going to be beyond. More of it will be beyond here than we will see at Florida State as a pro. And that's part of the learning. And that presentation and the body language, we're trying, and he knows. He's a fighter. The adrenaline, the emotion, it all seems to mount and happen at the same time. And we're trying. And clearly we need to do better, and he needs to do better. But, it is something that we have talked about a handful of times, and it's unfortunate that we're in this situation because it hurts not having him. And we have a responsibility to try to help him grow, and we have a responsibility to try to put a product on the field that does what Florida State baseball is supposed to do. And he clearly does help that. We just have to mature, and he's got to learn and grow through some of these things so it doesn't hold him back. Clearly here, it's holding him back. And then beyond here, you don't want that to ever impact how the next level looks at what you're doing.
I guess Brody, is that the clear kind of option for at least Friday, unless you don't want to disclose, I guess, your plans. I don't want to give anything away.
Brody's had some huge moments, and the consistency of the at-bat is a little perplexing at times because, my goodness, you see him do some things that have been so timely and helpful, and then there's some other ABs that lack. He is still very, very young at this, and that's a logical move. I don't have their pitching rotation. I don't know what's going on. I know Forbes, I think was out last weekend, but I haven't gotten word yet. I would expect him to throw. I mean, he throws basically 100, and who knows? We have a couple other options. BJ's back with us, and we have some creative things that we've thought about, that we've tinkered with, that nobody's seen. And we have guys that have played the outfield that have not maybe played it for us, but played far more outfield than they did other positions. So we have some maneuvers to make, but Delamalure, logically, he needs this. And part of this is what helps you win. And then in the experience and learning, you expect them to be better from the experience and the at-bats and logging and the innings. So that's the logical move. But again, I don't have any idea of their rotation. We have not received that yet. So on my mind right now, yes, it would be Brody.
Seems like Carnes has found his footing at the plate and kind of been shown those advanced tools that you talked about in the preseason. Just what can you say about the way he swung it recently, and also just having a week off? How big was that for him to have fresh legs behind the plate as well?
Yeah, the biggest transition for anybody on the field is the catching. If you go right now and went to a solid high school baseball game, so he was catching solid high school baseball, what do you think that game would look like today if you happen to show up at 5 o'clock and watch a high school game? It's going to be 7 innings. The velocities on the mound, totally different. The running game, the intensity, the number of at-bats, the fact that you can pinch run for the catchers, just so different. And I think some of the offensive part is affected by the demands on the defensive part. And you have Smelia, you got West, and we had a nice little rotation going. But as you saw Carnes polish himself behind the plate, it was a comfortable feeling we had when he was catching. But I don't know that catching this type of pitching staff is easy. And then all of a sudden you find yourself these at-bats and the base running stuff we're trying to do. It adds up, the number of games. It's a huge transition. And it's another reason you don't see a lot of high school catchers go right into professional baseball, because it's so different than what they've experienced. So I think you have to look at the collective part of that position to then get to the offensive side. And is he more comfortable physically, like with the at-bats in the 6th inning of the game, in the 7th inning, in the 9th inning of the game? We know it's there at the plate. The guy's still a freshman. He's had some big hits for us. That was a huge one the other night. I see progression. And the struggles early in the pitch recognition and maybe being out in front of some of the secondary pitches and fouling off some of the good hittable fastballs. He gets into little moments where he's trying to steer the ball the other way, thinking that might be the answer. And then he's under the fastball. And then there's just little modifications that he tries to make. And at some point, Cam went through it too. Miles is going to. You have to figure out, this is how I need to do it. And then it's very minor timing and feel adjustments. And some of those are simply in game with how you're being pitched. So there's nobody that's had more thrown at them than Carnes. Nobody. Between the catching, the demand, the length of the game, the physicality, he got banged up. The at-bats, at one time we had him in the 4 or 5 hole. We know it's coming. I just think settling in at that position is the most difficult thing in college baseball.